Number 10. Harry's misconduct. Back in 2005, Prince Harry attended a costume party dressed as a Nazi. This is a risky enough outfit for anyone, let alone a British royal. Of course, pictures from the party were leaked to the press, who plastered it all over their front pages. Harry, who was 20 years old at the time, really should have known better, but he still made a public apology from his royal offices, which read, "Prince Harry has apologized for any offense or embarrassment he has caused. He realizes it was a poor choice of costume." But the papers held on to the story for quite some time, and it caused widespread outrage worldwide. Then 4 years later, in 2009, the prince was dealt another huge blow to his reputation when a tape emerged of him using racial slurs against members of his own army platoon. In the video, you can hear the prince using offensive language as well as racist terms. Once again, Harry had to make a public apology to try and save the royal family from further embarrassment. It didn't work, and the footage was relentlessly replayed around the world. If you're loving this video so far, please hit that like button, it would really help us out. Number 9. Prince Andrew's friend. The disgraced prince is no stranger to controversy. In 2011, it emerged that he was good friends with convicted sex offender and American financier Jeffrey Epstein. He was married to Sarah Ferguson, who came forward confirming their friendship and revealed that her ex-husband had asked Epstein to clear some of her debts. Although he later reported that he had cut all ties with Epstein, Buckingham Palace came under new pressure to explain their relationship with the American in 2015. The royal family has since tried to distance themselves from Andrew when his disturbing ties became public, and there was a civil case brought against him. Not long after that, it was announced that he would be stripped of his military titles and royal patronages and would no longer be allowed to use the title His Royal Highness in any official capacity. The trouble is that no one really knows the full extent of Andrew's involvement with Epstein, but the public mood still seems so set against him that he will likely not be able to return to public life for quite some time. Number 8. The Hidden Cousins. In 2011, an explosive documentary was released called The Queen's Hidden Cousins, which revealed a scandal that has avoided the public eye for decades. In the 1940s, mental illness was not understood as much as it is today, and so the royal family viewed it as an embarrassment when two of the Queen's first cousins, Nerissa and Catherine Bowles-Lyon, were born with severe learning difficulties. Born in 1919 and 1926 respectively, Nerissa and Catherine were never able to be a part of the royal family. Instead, they were incarcerated in a mental institution in 1941 and remained in care there for the rest of their lives. In the documentary, nurses who oversaw them categorically stated that no members of the family ever came to visit the two sisters, who were unable to articulate speech but apparently had a great spirit about them. When the story of the sisters' existence was published in 1987, a scandal instantly erupted when it emerged that the royal family had apparently erased two of its members from their lives entirely. Number 7. Jesse Armstrong. The creator and writer of HBO's Succession decided to use his acceptance speech at this year's Emmys to take a dig at King Charles. Jesse Armstrong graced the stage twice, once to pick up an award for his writing on the show, and again with the entire cast and crew to receive the Outstanding Drama Series award. He said, "A big week for Successions. New king in the UK, this for us. Evidently a little more voting involved in our winning than Prince Charles." Even in a room full of Americans, the audience was very shocked at this risky joke, and gasps could be heard on live broadcast. When there was a bit of an uncomfortable silence, the show's lead actor Brian Cox told him, "Keep it royalist," but Jesse kept going and said, "I'm not saying we're more legitimate in our position than he is. We'll leave that to the other people." According to eyewitness accounts, there was very little laughter in the room and most people just felt plain awkward. Number 6. The hospital incident. Charles has always had a bit of a rocky relationship when it comes to being a father to his two sons William and Harry, although nothing really displayed his attitude as a parent more than the hospital incident in 1991, when an 8-year-old Prince William underwent emergency surgery for a skull fracture. The little prince was hit on the head with a golf club while playing with schoolmates. The injury was so serious that he was kept overnight at London's Great Ormond Street Hospital following an hour-long operation. Princess Diana spent the night sleeping in a bed set up near William's room so she could look after her son, whereas Prince Charles took a different approach entirely. Rather than stay and comfort his wife and injured son, after a 15-minute visit, the prince left the hospital to go to the opera. It's no surprise that when Buckingham Palace was informed of the prince's decision to keep his previous plans but keep in touch with doctors, he was completely trashed by the tabloids. Number 5. Princess Diana. When Prince Charles wed Diana in 1981 in front of a global television audience of more than 750 million people, the couple seemed to be perfect for each other. But behind the scenes, the marriage had extreme problems, and it became apparent that Charles was having an affair with Camilla, the Duchess of Cornwall. A heartbroken Diana bravely decided to expose the affair in an infamous 1992 interview, saying, "There were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded." Subsequently, Charles publicly admitted to being unfaithful in his own interview, and the couple eventually divorced in 1996. With his admission of guilt, there was already public outrage growing against him, but it all came to a head when the princess was killed in a Paris car crash in 1997. From that point on, there were vitriolic outpourings in the press against both him and Camilla, and his popularity sank to an all-time low. So the British public, who is still very protective of Diana, still haven't been able to forgive Charles for how he treated her during their ill-fated marriage. Number 4. Princess Anne's marriage. As the only daughter of Queen Elizabeth II, Princess Anne's romantic life has been under a microscope since she was young, despite the fact that the princess lives a relatively private life away from the constant scrutiny that often follows a member of the royal family. She married Lieutenant Mark Phillips in 1973 at Westminster Abbey in a highly televised and anticipated ceremony, but their marriage was deeply troubled, and Phillips ended up having an affair with New Zealand art teacher Heather Tonkin. This resulted in a daughter being born in 1985. The marriage was in complete shambles, but struggled on for 4 more years before Princess Anne and Mark Phillips separated in 1989. The divorce was finalized a few years later in 1992. Interestingly enough, Anne remarried later that year, becoming the first royal divorcee since Henry VIII. Their wedding was much more reserved than the first one, with only 30 guests and no cameramen. And 30 years later, they are still happily together. Number 3. Boris Johnson. The former Prime Minister and the new reigning monarch always had a rocky relationship, but they got into a major spat when Boris started pushing the controversial Rwanda asylum plan. The policy would have allowed the government to remove asylum seekers who crossed the channel to the UK and send them to Rwanda to claim asylum there instead. In short, Boris thought it was a great plan, and Charles said that the idea sounded appalling. The former British PM hit back at his comments, saying that most people could see that criminal gangs need to be stopped, and that it's the job of the government to stop people breaking the law. But their relationship really began to sour, and Charles eventually invited Boris to his estate for a meeting, which was a complete disaster from start to finish, as Boris reportedly didn't show him any respect, and there was clearly a lot of tension between them. Number 2. Princess Diana's struggles. In 1992, Andrew Morton published his biography on the Princess of Wales, called Diana: Her True Story. It contained explosive details about Diana's eating disorder, something that was long rumored in the press but never covered this extensively. It turns out his source for it all was Diana herself, who passed the author confessional tapes. Quote, "The bulimia started the week after we got engaged and would take nearly a decade to overcome. My husband put his hand on my waistline and said, 'Oh, a bit chubby here, aren't we?' And that triggered off something in me and the Camilla thing. I was desperate." Diana revealed that she was driven to an eating disorder by being trapped in a loveless marriage and the pressure of being in the public eye. But her raw, candid confession sent shockwaves through the world at a time when eating disorders were rarely talked about openly. To have a global superstar do so and on such a stage challenged a major societal stigma. And coming in at number 1, Prince John. Born on July 12, 1905, Prince John was the youngest son of King George V, the Queen's grandfather. The young boy reportedly suffered from epilepsy, and the royal family was not particularly interested in having him live a very public life as a royal because of the stigmas behind the disorder. So they deployed a very familiar tactic to cope with what they thought would have been a scandal. They hid the child away from public view. Royal biographer Christopher Wilson has noted that some family trees completely leave out Prince John's name. He explained that if they feel they have somebody that isn't up to scratch, they want to write them out of the history books. And this happened in the case of Prince John. The moment that he died, we hear no more about him, which is incredibly sad but not unusual behavior when it comes to the British monarchy. Number 10. Prince Harry. Since stepping down from royal duties, Prince Harry has made his disdain for Charles pretty apparent, but he took his family beef to the next level when he criticized Charles's parenting on Dax Shepard's Armchair Expert podcast. The 36-year-old claimed that his father handed down a cycle of genetic pain and suffering to him, which is why he and his wife Meghan Markle moved to Los Angeles. Harry says that they got out of the royal family to break the cycle. Quote, "He treated me the way he was treated, so how can I change that for my kids? We as parents should be doing the most we can do to try and say, you know what, that happened to me and I'm gonna make sure that doesn't happen to you. Harry went on to describe his life as a royal as a mixture of the Truman Show and being in a zoo. In fact, Harry said that he had debated leaving the royal family since his early 20s because of what it did to his mum, which contradicts the narrative that Meghan was the one who wanted to leave. Number 9. Meghan Markle. During her explosive interview with Oprah Winfrey, the Duchess of Sussex claimed that someone in the family had expressed concern about the complexion of her child's skin. It was then that the allegations started to snowball, and Prince Harry told the Star that the incident happened right at the beginning of the pregnancy and left him a bit shocked. Meghan told Oprah, "In those months when I was pregnant, all around the same time, we have in tandem the conversation of he won't be given security, he's not going to be given a title, and also concerns and conversations about how dark his skin might be when he's born." Then a royal book by Christopher Anderson revealed that a source close to the family claimed that it was Charles who made the comment during a conversation over breakfast with his wife Camilla on the day that Meghan and Harry's engagement was announced. He allegedly asked Camilla, "I wonder what the children will look like," and lowering his voice asking, "I mean, what do you suppose the children's complexion might be?" So it wasn't exactly subtle. Number 8. Trevor Noah. The Daily Show host made it clear that he is not a fan of the new king at all and decided to make fun of his pen complaints. The British monarch got the whole internet laughing with his bizarre behavior because it was all caught on camera. The first time he frantically urged staff to clear the extra pens from his desk while he signed his accession proclamation. The second time was when he got really mad over a leaky pen, saying, "I can't bear this bloody thing. What do they do every stinking time?" But Trevor Noah thought he was being ridiculous and said, "What the hell was that? Did you see that thing that he did? He's also the ruler of an animal kingdom. I love how Charles says the pens leak on him all the time. You're literally the king of England, dude. If you don't like the pens, get different pens." I'm not an expert in the monarchy, but I'm pretty sure the hierarchy doesn't go Prince William, King Charles, and then the guy who buys the pens. Number 7. Diana's biography. It's no secret that Prince Charles and Diana had a terrible marriage, but unlike many royals, Diana was vocal about her private affairs. We know that she felt like a total outsider within the royal family and felt like a prisoner trapped in a loveless marriage. In Diana's biography, she recounted a desperate time when she felt truly shut out by her husband. Quote, "Charles said I was crying wolf. I said I felt so desperate I was crying my eyes out, and he said, 'I'm not going to listen, you're always doing this to me. I'm going to go riding now.' So I threw myself down the stairs." She ended up falling right at the Queen's feet, and as it turns out, Elizabeth and Charles had nearly polar opposite reactions to her cry for help. According to Diana, the Queen comes out absolutely horrified, shaking. She was so frightened. Diana said that she was quite bruised around the stomach, but when Charles came back from riding, he just dismissed the whole incident and carried on out the door. Number 6. Tony Blair. The royals are expected to understand that party politics and individual politicians are totally off limit for public comment. Former British Prime Minister Tony Blair was so furious about Prince Charles's behavior during his time in Downing Street that he reportedly complained about him to Queen Elizabeth. He accused Charles of crossing the line and meddling in political matters by trying to influence government policy. The ex-Labour leader was said to have become exasperated by his interventions over agriculture, the armed forces, architecture and homeopathy, and even genetically modified foods. Then scandal erupted for both men in 2015 when they became embroiled in the scandal known as the Black Spider Memos, which was a collection of 27 letters that Charles sent from 2004 to 2005 lobbying the British PM for the policy changes that he hoped for. This was a pretty big controversy considering that members of the royal family are supposed to stay out of politics and remain neutral, especially the ones who were always destined to be king. Number 5. Beatrice's boyfriend. The Queen's granddaughter, Princess Beatrice, is 9th in line for the throne now. She's well known for being a socialite and a philanthropist, but she has certainly made some sketchy dating decisions in the past. In 2006, when the princess was just 17 years old, she started dating an American playboy called Paolo. This relationship was very troubled. Not only was Paolo older than the teenage princess, but he had a dark past. Prior to his relationship with Beatrice, Paolo was arrested for the manslaughter of 19-year-old Jonathan Duchatelia. Well, apparently he decided to confront Paolo for disrespecting women at a party, so he got beat up. Amazingly, the manslaughter charge was dropped and reduced to a lesser charge, but he even broke the terms of his probation while dating Beatrice by taking a trip to the French Alps. Talk about red flags. But thankfully, their relationship didn't last long at all. Number 4. Richard Rogers. The award-winning British architect had made it known that when it comes to his career and livelihood, his biggest enemy is King Charles, who has used his power and influence on several occasions to step in at the last minute and object to Richard's designs. In one instance, Charles personally wrote a letter to his client, the Prime Minister of Qatar, another royal, to say that Richard's design was too modern to be built on a site that was so close to Christopher Wren's 17th century Chelsea hospital. So the architect was kicked off the job and the British architectural establishment was up in arms. Richard said, "I don't believe that the Prince of Wales understands architecture. He thinks it is fixed at one point in the past. He occupies a privileged position, and he should not use that to damage the livelihoods of the people that he disagrees with." While it's common knowledge that Charles has a huge disdain for modern architecture, which is probably classist in some way or another, it seems as though he is not above ruining someone's career over his taste in buildings. Number 3. Margaret's heartbreak. Princess Margaret famously fell in love with Peter Townsend and was so dedicated to the man that she actually planned to marry him, but the relationship was doomed from the beginning as he was 16 years older than her and already married with 2 children. While Townsend eventually divorced his wife in 1952, the Church of England's then strict rules about remarriage after divorce forced Margaret's hand. Under the Royal Marriages Act of 1772, the princess required the Queen's permission to marry before the age of 25. Although she had turned 25 that August, she still needed the Parliament's approval, and they had already made it clear that they would never offer her consent. She would have been able to marry him if she gave up her title and rights of succession, but Margaret was also aware that it would have never been allowed by the church either. She released a heartbreaking statement saying, "It might have been possible for me to contract a civil marriage, but mindful of the church's teaching that Christian marriage is indissoluble, I have resolved to put these considerations before any others." Number 2. Nigel Farage. The broadcaster and former politician was quick to criticize King Charles's opinion on the controversial Rwanda policy. Farage took to Twitter and slammed his comments, writing, "Unless Prince Charles wants to destroy the monarchy, he had better shut up fast." Not only did he disagree with his point of view, but the fact that he expressed it at all, considering that yes, he is a royal and should not be making his political opinions public. But Farage really came under fire after posting a clip that seemed to mock Queen Elizabeth's death. He shared a 5-second clip to his TikTok account, which has now been viewed more than 6 million times, with the caption, "The Queen is dead, long live the King." In the video, Nigel looked and sounded incredibly sarcastic and said, "The Queen is dead, long live the King, sad day but we now have a king." He also shared the post on Twitter. No one was really sure what he meant by it, but a lot of people thought it was inappropriate considering how little emotion he showed while making the announcement. And coming in at number 1, Princess Catherine. The royals are known for their discretion and their decorum, so you might not know that the new King of England did not get along with his daughter-in-law at all. Although Kate and William have been an item for over a decade, Charles reportedly didn't embrace her when she was first introduced to the family and did not approve of their relationship. Part of the reason was because they were immensely popular, and Kate and William would send the media into a tailspin every time they left the palace. Their whirlwind romance began just a few years after Charles married Camilla, and unfortunately the older couple didn't seem too happy about sharing the spotlight with the younger couple. In 2011, the pair flew to Canada and LA on their first official trip as a royal couple. They reportedly hoped to impress King Charles, but all he seemed to care about was the fact that they posed in too many tasteless photos. So Kate's relationship with her father-in-law was rocky from the beginning.